Bronny James will win Rookie of the Year. Welcome to a new series on my channel that I'm going to be starting. This is NBA hot takes that get hotter as the video goes on. Emanuel quickly wins Most Improved Player. We're going to start off with some takes that are a little bit more realistic, and as the video progresses, the takes are going to get unrealistic, but hey, there's still a possibility of these things happening. The Toronto Raptors have completely changed up their franchise as they traded Siakam and OG Anunoby. The Raptors have decided to go all in on this rebuild around Scotty Barnes. This is who's going to be starting for them next season. They have Emanuel quickly at point guard. Shooting guard's going to be Grady Dick. Small forward RJ Barrett. Power forward Scotty Barnes. And the center is going to be Jakob Poeltl. Emanuel quickly is 25 years old, and last season he averaged 17 points per game on really good efficiency. Last year Tyrese Maxey won Most Improved Player, and he's a guy that I kind of can compare quickly to. I think Emanuel quickly is going to have a jump kind of like Maxey did as soon as Harden left. Again, this is a completely new looking Raptors team. They're not going to be very good, and I think quickly can go from being a 17 point per game scorer to like a 24, 23, maybe even higher point per game scorer next season. Trey Young will be an all-star starter. The duo of Trey Young and DeJounte Murray did not work out in Atlanta. Now DeJounte Murray is on the New Orleans Pelicans, and I expect the Hawks to be kind of in a similar spot that they were last year, maybe even a little bit worse. But I think there's a pretty good case that Trey Young is about to average like 30 points per game and maybe like 11 or 12 assists per game. It might sound a little bit crazy, but we've seen how good of a passer Trey Young has been, averaging 10.8 assists per game last year. And as far as his points went, it was 25.7 points per game. There was just so many games that I remember looking at the box score and just seeing Trey Young 30 points, 10 boards. Now, if you've got to pick two guards in the East, there's a lot of options. You know, you got Tyrese Halliburton, Jalen Brunson, Jaylen Brown. I'm just naming names off the top of my head. I'm obviously going to miss some. Trey Young is really not at the top of that list, especially because he doesn't play a lot of defense, but his offensive numbers are going to have to be off the charts, some of the best in the entire league, if this take wants to be true next season. But I think there's a world where it could be true. I do, but it's kind of unlikely. Russell Westbrook is a key piece in the Denver Nuggets NBA Finals run. And now the hot takes are starting to get a little bit more unrealistic. The Nuggets obviously went out and got Russell Westbrook on a very cheap contract. And the Nuggets also lost their shooting guard, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who's now on the Orlando Magic, and they lost backup point guard Reggie Jackson. Russell Westbrook is a weird one because he's never really been a winner in his career. That's the one thing everyone says about him. He can never get it done when it comes to the playoffs. You can put up all the numbers in the world, but he can't get it done. And the last few seasons for Westbrook have been absolutely disastrous. On the Lakers, the media absolutely bashed him. He ended up taking, cheaper contracts, taking a bench role. And one way that I could maybe justify this hot take is maybe he's more of like a veteran, just like good teammate type of guy, like good vibes. Because there's a lot of players in the NBA that bring like bad vibes, or just they're not really leaders. But Westbrook obviously has a lot of experience, and hey, maybe he comes off the bench and he's getting, 6-7 rebounds per game, 5 assists per game. And if he can score, that obviously helps. Last year, he only averaged 11 points per game, which we know that's pretty low for Russell Westbrook standards. But hey, we'll see how this works out for the Nuggets. Maybe he even ends up being a starter over Christian Brown. I kind of doubt it. But as long as the Nuggets don't get hurt and are still healthy, we kind of know that they're going to be in the playoff picture come April. The Memphis Grizzlies get the 1 seed in the Western Conference. Last season, the Grizzlies were the 3rd worst team in the entire Western Conference. Out of 15 teams, they were 3rd worst. The only 2 teams that were worse than them were the Portland Trail Blazers and the San Antonio Spurs. They had a record of 27-55, but obviously they were missing a lot of their key players, like of course Ja Morant, who was out because of the whole legal situation, and then he ended up getting an injury. Desmond Bane also missed like half the season. Jaren Jackson Jr. missed like 20 games. Marcus Smart missed a lot of time. The Grizzlies, to me, just feel like a regular season team. I don't know what's gonna happen when it comes to the postseason, when they actually get into the playoffs, assuming they do. But they seem like a team that could really just be a regular season warrior type team, like come out with the 1 seed, although it's kind of unlikely. Hey, we're talking about hot takes here. Like, this is not a gimme by any means. Like, I think realistically the Thunder would probably get it, but hey, we're talking hot take. I could see the Grizzlies coming out and getting, close to 60 wins and then even possibly getting first rounded, because we know how stacked this Western Conference is. You got to be scared of everybody. Let's be honest, even in the play-in, whoever the 10 seed will be, you probably got to be scared of them in the playoffs, or the play-in, I should say. But I looked into the odds because I just want to see, like, is it a hot take? And they have the Grizzlies being like the 8th best record in the West going to this next year. So I do think this is kind of a hot take, but I think getting Ja Morant back, Marcus Smart, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., all healthy, hopefully, and then they went out and picked up Zach Edey in the draft, which he's looked pretty good in Summer League. We'll have to see how that works, because as of right now, they don't have a lot of backup bigs. I mean, maybe Brandon Clark, who's very short. Like, they don't have a lot. Santi Aldama's not really a big. So they're probably going to be giving Zach Edey a lot of minutes, and a lot of critics, a lot of scouts or whatever said he's not an NBA player. He's not going to be good in the NBA. So we'll see. I kind of feel like they're going to be wrong. Yeah, I just think that this team's roster is just good top to bottom. You know, you got Gigi Jackson and Vince Williams now off the bench, who shined last year with all of the injuries that they had. So they got some more experience under their belt. They developed a little bit more. And I think a lot of people just forgot how good Ja Morant actually is. Like, when he's healthy, when he's on the court, he's one of the best players in the entire NBA. And I also think Jaren Jackson Jr. had a down year last year. He plays better when Ja Morant is there. So I think there's a solid case to the Grizzlies being the 1 seed in the West. The Houston Rockets make the playoffs. Okay, we still haven't gotten any takes that are like unbelievably unrealistic. Like, it's just not gonna happen. All of these things could happen. And I think when I say Rockets make the playoffs, a lot of y'all be like, yeah, they could make the playoffs, but you're probably not realizing how stacked the West really is. Like, the Rockets will have to be top 8 in the Western Conference, and just listen how stacked it is. You got the Thunder, the Nuggets, the Timberwolves, the Mavericks, the Suns, the Lakers, the Pelicans, the Kings, the Warriors, the Grizzlies. That's 10 teams right there, and I'm not even counting like the Clippers, or maybe you think the Spurs are going to be decent. There's a lot of teams, and only 8 can make it. The Rockets were 11th last year. They were kind of close. They were close to stealing a little play-in spot last year. Obviously, Alperen Sengun went down with a bad leg injury at the end of the year, and that's when Jalen Green kind of broke out. I think he had like a kid or something. Sengun went down, and Jalen Green started dropping 30 bombs left and right. There's a lot of like high potential players on this roster. Like Jabari Smith Jr., I think, is a dog. You got Jalen Green, who a lot of people are very high on. Reed Shepherd out of the NBA draft. Amen Thompson should be pretty good. Tari Eason, Cam Whitmore. Like, this team is absolutely loaded with young talent. It's just a matter of, is this the year where they finally take that step forward and make something happen? You know, because last year, I mean, no one was really expecting them to be in the play-in or the playoffs, but they just didn't get it done. Is this the year where they can get it done? JJ Redick wins Coach of the Year, and the Los Angeles Lakers get the 1 seed. JJ Redick is currently 13th in odds to win Coach of the Year, and I think a reason as to why he's kind of low is because when you have a lot of talent on your roster, like, he's coming into a team that has LeBron James and Anthony Davis, 2 of the best players of this generation. It's hard to win Coach of the Year when you already have that much talent. I feel like a lot of the time they give it to a coach who kind of exceeds expectations, but the Lakers could exceed expectations by getting the 1 seed. Now, I think this is very unlikely. It's possible, but there's just so many good teams in the Western Conference. Again, we just spoke about them like literally 30 seconds ago. And another major thing here is health, because in the regular season, you need guys that are going to be out there. We know LeBron James is very old. He's going to be like 40 years old soon. He's not going to play 82 games. So you're going to have a lot of games without LeBron. Anthony Davis is also known to be very injury prone. So for this to be true, you probably need them both to play like 72 plus games. There's a world where that happens, but it's unlikely. And even if they do play that many games, it still probably doesn't happen. But hey, anything could happen when you got LeBron James on your team. No glaze. I guess I am kind of glazing, but you know what I'm saying. Chet Holmgren wins Finals MVP. All right, now we're starting to get into the very hot takes. We're starting to get somewhat unrealistic. This one is still possible. I mean, all of these are kind of possible, but for this to even have a chance of happening, the OKC Thunder are going to have to be very good next year, which is likely, but not only very good, they're going to have to win the NBA Finals, and then Chet Holmgren is going to have to outplay not only SGA, but also Jalen Williams, and maybe someone else steps up, maybe Caruso or Isaiah Hartenstein's the same, but Chet Holmgren's gonna have to be the best player in the NBA Finals. And that's very tough to do when you got a guy on your team named Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is obviously the best player on that team. So I guess that's why this is a hot take, and obviously that's obviously why, because if the Thunder win the NBA Finals, odds are SGA is gonna get the Finals MVP. But we saw last season, and some of you guys may disagree, but most people say Tatum is the best player on the Celtics. But the best player doesn't always win Finals MVP. We also saw Andre Iguodala get it when Steph Curry should have probably gotten it, but it just matters how much of an impact they make in a 7-game series. And Chet's probably not going to outscore SGA. I mean, there's a world where that happens, but I think the route to him getting Finals MVP, if the Thunder can pull it off and win the NBA Finals, would be his defense. If he can absolutely be one of the best rim protectors in the game and just shut down the paint in the NBA Finals, that would be kind of his path to getting it. I think kind of like how Kristaps Porzingis started off the NBA Finals in the recent NBA Finals, where he was just blocking everything. I think that's how it would happen. Victor Wembanyama wins MVP. Now we're starting to get really unrealistic, and I'm not saying Wemby's never going to win an MVP, but the thing about this is your team has to be good, and they more than likely have to be a playoff team for someone to win the most valuable player award. It's not really like the best player always gets it. You also need a lot of team success nowadays. And obviously the San Antonio Spurs are not very good right now. Last year, they were the 2nd worst team in the entire Western Conference. Now here's a post I found on Reddit from 6 years ago of the seeds of all of the MVPs. So it's not completely updated, but you guys can see Harden was the 1st seed when he won it. Westbrook was the 6th. That's kind of the outlier because look at all of the others. It's a bunch of 1st and 2nd seeds winning the MVP. Now, last year, I believe Jokic was the 3rd seed, basically the 1 seed though, because it was like within 1 win. But the moral of the story is the Spurs are probably gonna have to be like a top 8 seed. They're gonna have to at least be a playoff team if Wemby wants to win MVP. Now, I do think there's a chance that Wemby is the best player in the NBA next year. There's a chance for that. He's insane. He is just insane. You guys got to give him his flowers already. I think he's probably going to win Defensive Player of the Year. That's not really a hot take at this point in time. He averaged 5 steals and blocks per game last year as a rookie. That's only going to get better, and he averaged 21.5 points per game with 10.6 rebounds per game. He is a monster. But how good can the Spurs be? I don't think they're going to be good enough for him to win MVP. But hey, if they can be a playoff team, I wonder what the conversations are going to be like. The Charlotte Hornets make the playoffs. This one's a little bit interesting. The Hornets were the 3rd worst team in the Eastern Conference. Last year, they had a record of 21-61. The only 2 worst teams were the 2 worst teams in the entire NBA. And that's, of course, the Washington Wizards and the Detroit Pistons. So going from literally 21 wins, one of the worst teams in honestly NBA history, to a playoff team the next season, that's a pretty big jump. And obviously a lot of people aren't going to agree with this. We know the Eastern Conference is not as stacked as the Western Conference, but there's still a lot of really good teams out east. You got the Celtics, the Knicks, the Bucks, the Cavs, the Magic, Pacers, 76ers, Heat, and that's like the top 8. And then there's a few other, solid ones. The Hornets are really not on those teams' level. At least that's not what people are thinking right now. But the case for this one is health. Last year, the Hornets were missing a lot of people. Obviously, they were missing LaMelo Ball. They were missing Mark Williams. They missed Miles Bridges at the start of the year. And with the steps that Brandon Miller took last year, it looks like he's developing mad nice. He's looking pretty good, bro. LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges, Mark Williams. That's a solid team. Obviously, I'm missing one starter, which as of right now is Josh Green. You don't get too excited when you hear Josh Green is starting, but hey, they have 4 very talented players on this team. Maybe they slide Grant Williams into the small forward role. Also, Nick Richards off the bench, solid. Trey Mann, also pretty good. I mean, there's a case for it. It's going to be unlikely, but it could happen. It could happen if Brandon Miller takes another step forward and this team can stay healthy. LaMelo Ball's ankles finally hold up and he can play, 70-something games. Mark Williams is good. Miles Bridges usually is good with being there. Like, he's a guy you could just pump minutes into. He's going to play like almost every game. But the Hornets in the playoffs, that's going to be tough to pull off. But hey, it's an interesting take. Luka Donic has a 100-point game. Okay, so this is going to be the hottest take of the entire video. This one's pretty unrealistic. A lot of people think that it'll never be done again after, of course, Wilt had the 100-point game, which we're not even sure if that happened because we've never seen complete video proof of this 100-point game. Kobe obviously had an 81-point game, and last season Luka went for 73. So that's the reason I'm saying it's Luka, because if it's going to be somebody, it might be a Luka. I mean, he's still really young. Maybe it happens throughout his career, but we're talking about this next season. We're talking about this next season. Luka Donic is getting a 100-point game. That's very unrealistic. It's a hot take, but if you're going to pick somebody, it might as well be Luka. What's it going to take for this to happen? I don't know. Probably a lot of free throws. He'd probably need like 30 free throws, maybe a double overtime game. Like, I'm not saying it's out of the realm of possibility. I'm not one of those guys that thinks it'll never happen. I kind of think it will with the way that the NBA is going. It's a lot more fast paced, a lot more threes are going up. I think it could happen. Like, it probably will. It probably takes overtime though. Like I said, right now, go in the comments and let me know one of your hottest takes for this upcoming NBA season. Even if you don't fully believe it, but there's a chance that it could happen, let me know in the comments below. And subscribe if you guys are new, because we're a relatively small channel. We're on the road to 3K subs. Sub up. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.